Nightside with Dan Ray.
We have some very interesting and some very challenging topics on deck. I want you to participate, whatever your point of view.
Call 617-254-1030 or 888-929-1030.
You can say whatever you want, but please be truthful.
The News Watch never stops. WBZ News Radio 1030.
All right, we will get back to that whole question of closing schools for cold weather. And thank you, all of you who called in and supported my position. I'm not a wimp, but I do think that the judgments that were made today in Boston, Mayor Marty Walsh and the Boston School Department made the right decision, and the decision in the other communities that closed. If you want to check for tomorrow, and I think that virtually all school systems will be open tomorrow, go to cbsboston.com. There are some that are either opening an hour later. If I'm not mistaken, Rob checked them. There's some that are opening an hour later, delayed openings and things like that. And mostly, preschool or kindergarten. So for the most part, you're going to have school tomorrow, kids. Sorry about that. No really long weekend. Today was a big day in Massachusetts. Long time coming. We have a new governor tonight. He's only been governor for a little over about 9 hours. We have a new governor, Charlie Baker, and a new lieutenant governor, Karen Polito. And I want to talk about that. If you were at the event today and you'd like to call in and tell us about it, I watched a little bit of it on TV, listened to a lot of it on radio. It seemed like a pretty exciting day at the State House. There seemed to be an atmosphere at the State House of change, certainly, and it seemed to be a very upbeat ceremony. And I believe that Charlie Baker is going to do a great job as governor of Massachusetts. I will mention that next Wednesday night, right here in this studio, we will have Boston Mayor Marty Walsh and the new governor, Governor Charlie Baker, in studio live to take your phone calls. I believe it's the first time that a sitting governor and a sitting mayor of Boston have come together to take phone calls from constituents in the same talk studio at the same time. There's no way of me knowing that for sure, but I can't think of it ever having happened before. With me in studio is Ray Howell. He was the press secretary for Bill Weld for many years. He's been around a long time. Can you think of another time when a sitting governor and a sitting mayor of Boston sat together in a talk studio?
I can't, Dan, and congratulations. It's a coup. But no, I can't. I've been around 30 years, and no, I don't think so.
Well, Ray Howell is a longtime political operative. He now runs a corporate public relations firm called Howell Communications. Ray was there with Bill Weld. Did you run the campaign for him in 1989 and 90?
No, I was his press secretary during that first campaign, but I managed his re-election campaign in 94.
You managed the re-election campaign in 94, okay. And that
was, by the way, that was the easy one. The hard one was 90.
No, I get it, sure. Well, that was the John Silber campaign, and 94 was Mark Roosevelt.
Yes.
And the Secretary of Administration and Finance, and also the Health and Human Services Secretary for a while, was a guy named Charlie Baker.
That's right.
So you've known Charlie Baker for a long time.
Long time.
What do you think? He is going to inherit a mess financially. You're looking at probably, $600 or $700 million shortfall. I think he's going to do really well.
I agree with you, Dan. He is inheriting a mess, and he is the right guy for the job at the right time because he thrives on this kind of thing. As you know, he took over Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare when it was in receivership and turned that around. This is the kind of thing that gets him up in the morning. So I think, he'll be excited about this. And, back in the Weld days when he was, as you pointed out, Administration and Finance Secretary, which is basically the person in charge of the budget, and when he was head of Health and Human Services, he really was the heart and soul of the Weld administration. And Bill Weld would tell you that himself.
I would argue that the second most important person at the State House, in the executive branch at least, is the Secretary of A&F. With all due respects to the lieutenant governors that have served, Secretary of Administration and Finance is a really important position.
That's absolutely true. That's where the money decisions get made. That's who decides where the money gets spent, and that's what
he's also assembled. I think an interesting team, or is beginning to assemble an interesting team. He's reached across the aisle, has some Democrats, Jay Ash from Chelsea, the Democratic mayor of Gloucester, Francesco Urena has been appointed Secretary of Veterans Affairs. I won't go down the entire list, but it seems like he has reached out and he has a cabinet now that reflects, I think, some different viewpoints, maybe viewpoints that you might not expect.
I agree with you, Dan, and I make a couple of points. One is I think he is going to be unpredictable in some ways. I mean, the other thing that he did that surprised a lot of people was the first issue we talked about after he got elected was the opioid epidemic in Massachusetts and the country, which I thought surprised a lot of people. They didn't think that that was the first thing that would come out of the mouth of a Republican. So I think it's going to be unpredictable. And some of his cabinet and other appointments have been surprising in one sense, but, Charlie has always been bipartisan. When he was A&F Secretary and Health and Human Services Secretary in the Weld administration, legislators liked working with him because they knew he was a straight shooter. He wasn't partisan. His word was good. And they knew that he wasn't going to try to position them publicly. They knew he wasn't going to try to score cheap political points at their expense. So, that really is his record. And, there was some criticism of him during the campaign that said he's sort of, morphed himself for political reasons into this centrist, into this sort of, this new Charlie Baker who's warm and fuzzy. I mean, he's a problem solver and he's a centrist, and I think that's how he'll govern.
Well, it will be interesting. 8 years of Deval Patrick. I must tell you that you may know the story. I was very disappointed in Governor Patrick on a number of levels, but most specifically on the way that he did not respond, his administration did not respond to the case of a nurse that we went to bat for, Julie Frascarelli. I don't know if you know that story
Sure.
or not, but I don't understand in that story. And we communicated with the governor's team. I did not speak with the governor directly on it, but I did speak with up and including his Secretary of Administration and Finance at the time. And this was a woman who had just simply made the oversight of renewing her license late for 6 weeks, paid a $57 fine, and there was absolutely no compassion, no consideration. And I have to believe that if that happened under a Charlie Baker, it would be a totally different response.
I think you're right about that, Dan. And listen, not to blow smoke at you, but part of the reason that should have been taken seriously is that it came from you. You're a credible source. And I remember back in the well days with the whole Salvati thing. We had a few conversations about that. We did. And, Bill Weld pardoned Salvati on the strength. Really, I mean, listen, he did his homework, but he took it seriously and looked into it on the strength, really, of your reporting and of your interpretation and analysis of that case. And, it turned out to be exactly right.
Well, he commuted Joe Salvati's sentence,
right? Sorry, commuted him.
Commuted his sentence in December of 1996. And, of course, subsequently, there were documents discovered which proved that Salvati was framed intentionally by corrupt FBI agents and a corrupt informant, Joe Barboza. And, of course, Mr. Salvati and Peter Limoni and two other men who died in prison went on and won in federal court $110 million. So that was but yeah, this was $10,000. They garnished Julie Frascarelli's paycheck for $10,505. She's a nurse that provides home care for a young boy named Levon Toppy. And Levon can't speak, he can't see, and he has feeding tubes. It's not what you call glamorous nursing. Mm-hmm. And I will hope that that the new governor and his team are responsive to people like that and to people who are really in need. And I just, I know today everything is strawberries and cream, and everything was. Were you up there for a while today?
I was tonight. I stopped by the inaugural tonight.
Yeah, so there was everything seems positive, and I know that eventually, I think people will be surprised. I know Bob DeLeo very well, the Speaker of the House. Yep. I think he likes Charlie Baker. I think he will get along with Charlie Baker better than he got along with Deval Patrick. I don't know the new Senate President, Stanley Rosenberg, that much, but
Nice guy, very nice guy,
Really
very
good
smart guy.
Good.
Yes,
Okay. Well, if they're smart, let's do it right for the Commonwealth. Here's what I want to do, Ray. I want to open up the phone lines, and I want people to call in and tell us what they think the Baker team will do, or what they think they should do, where their focus should be. And look, Ray Howell is somebody who knows the governor very well. We will have the governor in here next week with Boston Mayor Marty Walsh. I'd like to hear from you, from my listeners. What should Charlie Baker and Karen Polito's priorities be? 617-254-1030, 888-WBZ 1030. Whatever issue you think would help Charlie Baker and Karen Polito govern Massachusetts better, feel free to join the conversation. 617-254-1030, 888-WBZ 1030. We're coming right back on Nightside. All right, we have a new governor and a new lieutenant governor, and I watched enough of it today, and it had a nice feel to it. I don't know how that was planned, but there were a lot of school kids there. It just had a very nice feel, and I had a sense watching the new governor in the State House, in the House chamber, with the Speaker and the Senate President and the others. There seemed to be some bonhomie, some from friendship, some genuine handshakes and smiles, even though he's a Republican.
No, it's true. Listen, there's always a sense of hopefulness when there's a new governor or a new president. But I think in this case there really is a lot of hope, even among Democrats.
And Charlie Baker's a smart guy too. People don't underestimate that. He will get things done. Let's find out what people want him to do. So the way we're going to do this is Ray Howell is here, longtime political operative. As I said, he was the campaign manager for Bill Weld in Bill Weld's reelection in 1994. His press secretary during the original campaign. Worked closely with Charlie Baker during the first 5 or 6 years of the Weld campaign. And tell us what if you could sit with Governor Baker, what would your priority be? Let me go to Plymouth. Margie's down in Plymouth. Hey, Margie, welcome. You're on with Ray Howell. How are you tonight?
Very well, and you?
I'm doing just great. What would the priority be if you had a chance to get Ray Howell? Well, you have Ray Howell's here, and
I can't do much for him.
Well, I don't know about that. He'll be talking to Charlie. Go ahead.
Yeah, the number one thing is find ways to get people trained up for jobs instead of putting more and more money and more people onto welfare and onto all of the things. I heard on the news today how the lower class and the middle class are dropping in Massachusetts abysmally. And, we're a good state, and people should have the opportunity to work and everything, and we should be encouraging that, not just, discouraging it. And I think when you have a job, when you have something that's good for you, then you feel good about yourself and you want to make things better around you.
Well, I agree with you on that, Margie. Ray, quick comment?
Listen, I think the economy is going to be one of his two top priorities. And, I think where he, may be different from the previous administration is he's more of a free market person when it comes to the economy. I think he's going to, try to get out of the way and get government out of the economy a little bit and let the economy sort of go on its own. And, I think he's not going to sort of try to place bets on winners and losers. It's going to be a priority, and I think he's going to, generally get government out of it and let it grow on its own.
Well, the other thing, too, I know Charlie has talked a little bit about vocational schools. I think that there are a lot of folks who end up going to college these days, and they come out with degrees in things like anthropology, and art history, which probably don't make them ready for the job market. And look, there are people, if you can have a skill, Margie, if you're a plumber, if you're an electrician, if you're a carpenter, you'll never be unemployed because we all need those services. And I think an emphasis should be placed on those services, and I suspect Charlie Baker would probably agree with us.
I am so excited about this whole change. I just, butterflies.
Well, good for you, Margie. We'll see what happens. I hope you call in next Wednesday night when we have the governor and Boston Mayor Marty Walsh in studio.
Thanks so kindly.
Thank you very much,
Keep warm.
Margie. We will. Well, the studio's pretty good. It's the drive home that's going to be the problem. Thank you, Margie.
Okay.
Have a great night. Let me get John in Framingham. John in Framingham, how are you?
Pretty good. How is everyone?
We're doing great. And, of course, John in Framingham has Keith Technical High School out there, which is a great high school, and it provides people with skills. Go ahead, John. You're on with Ray Howell.
That serves the community around here, too, Ashland, a few other communities.
Sure.
It's a regional school, in other words.
Yes, I know, but it's located physically right there by the Loring Arena in Framingham.
Yep, I grew up on Winter Street right next door. So
sure.
Okay, so anyhow, enough about that. I think he talked a lot about education today. Now, charter schools, which I kind of think are like private schools within the public school system, he's trying to get more money for them, but that's going to leave kind of a argument with teachers union. And also the thought that if you're in a regular public school, you're just basically being abandoned. So, I mean, he supports that, and frankly, I don't know how far he's going to get any more than anyone else has already gone.
Well, Mayor Marty Walsh, a Democrat from Boston, also supports charter schools. I think Marty Walsh was the founder of a charter school, and I'm told that the charter schools, there's one in Malden that I'm going to be delivering a graduation speech to in June. The principal of that charter school, and you're right, it is a public school. He was telling me that they had 1,000 applications for 95 or 100 seats. And it's not charter schools. You don't apply and take a test. It's the luck. It's literally the luck of the draw.
I know, but that's going to serve few instead of the many, which public schools are supposed to do. So. Well, that's a philosophical thing.
No, hold on. Let me get Ray's response to charter schools. I think charter schools are great. It provides some extra opportunity, another choice, potential choice for parents and for kids.
It does. And first of all, let's remember that the new governor was actually a member of the school committee in his time at Swampscott. So, he sees the education issue from that perspective and that level. And I did some work for Mayor Menino, and people who among the greatest supporters of charter schools are minorities and underprivileged folks who live in the city who see that as a way out.
Waiting for Superman, the movie with Michelle Reed.
Right. So listen, I get I know there's an argument against it that you're sort of taking, that there's cherry picking of that goes on, and you're sort of drawing money away from the public school system. But I think people like the mayor and the new governor would say, it's an option, for a lot of people, and it's also an incentive to make the public schools better.
Yeah. Getting off education, the other big thing is going to be health care. Is it true what I heard today that we've actually paid like $500 million to correct the problem?
Yes. Well, that figure, we had Jim Roosevelt in from Tufts Health Plan the other night, and Jim said that he thought the figure was more in the vicinity of $250 million. But either way, it's real money, and it seems to me that we had a system that worked, and it had to be tweaked, and they outsourced the job to the same company from Canada, which couldn't get the Obamacare up on board. So it cost us anywhere from $250 to $500 million.
And we had a system that worked. I don't think it was that expensive to set up ours. I mean, we were getting money back from the federal government.
Yeah, well, I think the argument was that Jim Roosevelt made the other night was that in order to continue to receive some money or to the federal government sort of extorted Massachusetts to change the system. And at the end of the day, that's a big chunk of the budget deficit that Governor Baker's staring at tonight.
Well, I think it's going to be a nice shakeup. I mean, the national health care debate, which is going to, in the next 4 years, be up front, frankly. He's very qualified to contribute to that.
So on the day he becomes governor. So big, exciting day, January 8th, 2015, and Elvis Presley's 80th birthday as well. So there was a lot going on today. Thank you, John.
Okay, good luck, guys.
Have a great night. 617-254-1030, 888-WBZ 1030. What issue would you like Charlie Baker and Karen Polito to address first and foremost? What is the most important issue facing you as a resident of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Ray Howell, he is a longtime Republican activist, but he also, as a professional. I'm
bipartisan now, though, dear.
You are very bipartisan now. I was about to get that right. But I suspect that.
Get that in, would you?
Yeah, absolutely. Howell Communications, a corporate public relations firm. 617-254-1030, 888-WBZ 1030. Coming right back, talking some politics on the day that Charlie Baker and Karen Polito have now assumed their roles of leadership at the State House. Ray Howell, longtime political activist here in political operative and a friend, someone who I've known Ray for going on 30 years. And he was kind enough to come in tonight. He was at the inaugural events earlier. The big events tonight at the Westin, if I'm not mistaken, is it that word? Oh, the convention center?
Yes, at the BCEC, the
convention center. How big a crowd do you think they'll have over there tonight?
I was hearing they were going to have 5,000 people.
Wow. Well, you would think then for the first night. And you just showed me an email you got, and hopefully you can share that with the audience.
No, sure. We were talking earlier about how Charlie's got a reputation in the building from his work during the Weld days as someone who's reasonable to work with and bipartisan. And so I just got a note from Tom Finneran, who Dan, and is a fan of yours and a fan of the show. He must be listening.
Former Democratic speaker, yes.
He was the Speaker of the House, and before that he was the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee during Weld's term. And Weld actually credits Finneran with being a big part of balancing the budget when Weld was...
And someone who I think got railroaded, by the way. Why don't you read what he wrote?
Anyway, he just wrote in and said to those who worked with him and know him, there's a real sense of excitement about Charlie Baker's election. He's a leader, and he'll make Massachusetts great. So I think, I'm hearing a lot of that today from Democrats in the legislature.
Well, I think the atmospheric's going to be better. I know a lot of Democrats up there who felt, and I believe both the Speaker and the Senate President, Senate President Murray, I think felt somewhat frozen out, particularly in the second term of Governor Patrick. I know that for a fact, okay? Again, if you'd like to join the conversation, what issue, if you could get Charlie Baker's ear, and you will be able to get his ear and also Marty Walsh's ear next Wednesday night here, January 14th at 8 o'clock. Tonight you have my ear and you have Ray Howell. And Howell...
Dan, by the way, you got to be careful. You're going to have about 30 lobbyists camped outside the studio.
No. This is a no lobbyist zone. Simple as that. No, let's go to Steve. Steve is in Portsmouth. I'm assuming Portsmouth, New Hampshire, correct?
Yeah, that's right, Dan. Thanks for having me on, and hello to your guest. I am chiming in from a state north of yours, but when I turned on your broadcast, I heard your subject matter. You were putting the call out for suggestions, and I believe this is an issue that's relevant to most states.
That's not a problem. We take suggestions from everywhere. You go right ahead.
I appreciate that. Yeah, well, what this is has to do with education. As you know now, in America we have tens of millions of people out of work from all education backgrounds and skills and experience levels. And a phenomena I see that seems to be pretty much almost ubiquitous in all states now is this strange initiative that colleges, universities, and community colleges seem to be running now, is to try to bring in as many foreign students, actively recruiting as many foreign students as possible. Now, at this point in time, now I'm a big believer in education, and I want to see everyone have access to education and get educated and be useful participants in economic systems. I think maybe at this point, a lot of the foreign students should look for opportunities in their own country, but this is to keep the discussion on focus.
So what are you looking to do? Have him do?
Well, my point is this somehow we could start to put the priority on allowing Americans that are trying to get into colleges somehow to do that, and not be so focused on amping up like the H-1B visa students and that sort of thing.
Interesting question, Steve. Let's get Ray's reaction, then I'll give you mine. Go ahead, Ray.
Listen, I'm no economist, so I'm probably not qualified to answer this, but I will tell you, having worked with some big tech companies like Microsoft and others, the problem is they can't find enough people.
Well, no, that's not really true, but I'll let you finish.
No, that was it. I mean, listen, I've worked for them and I worked closely with them, and one of the problems they have is they just, they can't hire enough people with the skills they need for that company, and so that's why they and other companies are plowing their own money into educational programs because into STEM programs because they need people with tech degrees and there just aren't enough of them.
Yeah. Well, actually, I think there seems to be a discrepancy between perception and reality regarding that. There are many well-qualified, well-educated Americans that just simply can't find a job. They don't want to hire Americans now because the way the economy is going is they're always trying to force production costs down, and the biggest production cost is the cost of labor. And the game plan producing anything is to maximize a surplus, which is the difference between the cost of producing something and the amount you can sell it for.
Okay, boys,
Steve. That translates basically to putting as many Americans out of work as you possibly can.
Steve, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
How do you prevent students from other countries applying to come to these schools and apply to be accepted? Harvard and some of the really great universities, MIT, are now receiving applications from students around the world. I don't know that you can put up the equivalent of a trade barrier.
No. But my point is just stop, having to actively recruit. In other words, put a protocol in place where you first put priority on accepting all students that are in that state.
But how does government say that to Harvard or BC or any of the private academic institutions?
Well, just put a moratorium on HB1 visas. I mean, see, there's no such thing as free economy. Everything is rigged. Since the beginning of recorded history, all economies have been pretty much programmed by the people who, are in positions of power and influence in industry and in government. So,
Steve, we could have a whole conversation about that, and we will do that maybe at another time. But thanks very much. I'm flat up on my break, so I gotta let you run. But we'll talk about it if you get a chance. I just don't see technically how you're going to do that. That's all. I mean,
okay, absolutely. Okay, I'll let me just make this last statement, and I'll let you go because I appreciate the time. But please don't construe anything I'm saying as being against foreigners or other people. My basic philosophy is that the way the economics are going in the world now, I think each nation has to start building up its own economies, and the vanguard of the new developers of the economies, the various nations, will be the people who have the technical skills from those nations themselves. So maybe I should leave with that.
Fair enough, Steve. Thanks. I think you're probably coming from a different direction philosophically as Ray and I are, but you're always welcome on Nightside. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Have a great night. 617-254-1030, 888-WBZ-1030. Back we go. Dan in Wilmington, Massachusetts. Hey, Dan, welcome. You're next on Nightside. You're on with Ray Howell of Howell Communications, and also, more importantly for tonight, someone who worked very closely with Charlie Baker in the Weld administration.
Excellent. Dan, listen. What we need to do is focus on the budget deficit. And in order to do that, we need to focus on two things. Healthcare reform, deal with the health connector and all the stakeholders who should or should not be in the system to be short with that. And then second is prison and judicial reform. We shouldn't be penalizing people who have medical difficulties, okay, I won't say which ones, but who are ending up in the prison system because they have some kind of medical complication that needs to be addressed. And we need. So
when you say medical complication, I assume what you're talking about is somebody who is drug dependent, and they got to, however they're supporting their drug addict, whether they're using or selling, there has to be some consideration, and we got to get those people out, get them cleaned up, get them out of the.
I would agree with that, but I also think that there are people in the system who have mental health or sociological problems that need to be worked out with a counselor instead of being thrown in jail. And then, if they are thrown in jail, they can't come up, when their parole comes up at 5 years, and they say, okay, I'm ready, I've done the drill, and then have the parole board say, oh, I'm sorry, we weren't party to that agreement.
Okay, let me ask Ray Howell the question then. You raised the issue.
Sure.
Ray, Charlie's a Republican. Most Republicans are thought of as, quote unquote, law and order. Do you think that Charlie Baker will look at the prison population and say, hey, we have too many people in prison who are serving sentences that are not benefiting from the prison sentence? And as Dan from Wilmington is suggesting, there may be a better way to treat those folks and get them back on their feet.
A more cost-effective, long-term.
Okay, so let's see what Ray Howell says.
Listen, yep. I don't know I have no idea, of the answer to your specific question. I don't know what Charlie would say about that. But again, as I said earlier, I think he's going to be unpredictable. I think, the fact that he came out right after he was elected and said, I want to focus on the opioid epidemic, and he talked about, attacking it from all angles. He didn't come out and say, listen, we just need to put, drug addicts in jail or drug dealers in jail. He had it's clear that he wants to take a comprehensive approach to that problem. I think tells you something. Again, I don't know to your specific question what he's going to do or what he thinks, but
character, he has the competency, he can do that.
And he may have just as, for example, I use this as an example. Nixon was able to go to China on a larger scale. If it had been poor Hubert Humphrey who had gone to China, he would have been battered from pillar to post. Bill Clinton signed NAFTA. If NAFTA had ever come up under a Republican president, the unions would have prevented Bush from signing NAFTA. It might be that a Republican governor like Charlie Baker might actually be more sensitive to what you say, Dan. We'll see. Maybe we'll talk about that next week. Thanks for the suggestion.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's go to Karen out in Sudbury. Karen in Sudbury. I'm with Ray Howell. How are you, Karen?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing just great. Say hi to my guest, and what's your comment or question?
So, piggybacking off Dan from Wilmington, Charlie Baker coming out and making a statement about the opioid addiction.
Yes.
And he's going to address that problem. Nobody speaks for people that are in chronic pain. I work with a lot of people that are in chronic pain, and chronic pain can be managed very well by drugs that have really bad names like morphine, Vicodin, Valium, Percocet, Percodan, OxyContin, oxycodone. And these people are, they suffer. And when they suffer, they can't really live their lives. And because diversion of these drugs or people that are drug seeking that don't have pain has vilified chronic pain sufferers. It's now harder in the state of Massachusetts after the October 2nd legislation decision was put in place to get pain medication. People that suffer from chronic pain are made to feel like they're drug addicts when they're getting their pain medications filled. And a lot of these people function well, but nobody wants to be in chronic pain.
No one that I know. That's for sure, Karen.
That's right. And when you talk about drug addiction is the unlawful seeking of opioids. Drug dependency, anyone that has hypertension is dependent on their antihypertensives to keep their blood pressure down. When you have chronic pain, you can be dependent, and I've seen many patients that are dependent on their opioids to keep their pain in check. But that doesn't mean they're early filling or that they're misusing.
Okay, but let me ask you, Karen, a quick question. You're talking about people who are dealing with prescription drugs. Yep. Are they getting the drugs legally or are they getting them illegally?
They're getting them legally.
Getting them legally.
But now what they have to do is every month they have to see their physician and get a hard copy prescription.
Okay.
And go, so that would be like me saying to you, Dan, hypothetically, you have hypertension. And for some reason, some people like to take hypertensive drugs, but you need it to keep your blood pressure down. And now you have to go every month, and you have to get a hard copy prescription from your physician to get your drugs refilled. And you've been taking it for years, and all of a sudden it's changed.
And when did that change? In October?
October 2nd. Yeah,
Okay.
October 2nd. It finally went through after about 10 years. It's been knocked around, and because we have people
And who pushed
that
it
are
through?
drug
Who
addicts.
pushed it through?
I don't know who pushed it through. I think it's been kind of an ongoing effort by people that see drug addiction as a problem. When we talk about addiction, we're talking about criminals.
Yep. Okay.
We're talking about dependency. We're talking about patients that really are suffering and need.
Karen, you made some great points. Ray Howell hears you, and hopefully we'll be able to get that issue in front of Governor Baker. He'll be in next week. Feel free to join the conversation then as well.
Will.
Thank you, Karen. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
Let me get congratulations out to Lisa Pearson from Ipswich. Lisa has won this hour the family 4-pack of tickets to the Boston RV and Camping Expo at the Boston Convention Center, January 17th to the 19th. No better location in New England for families to explore their camping needs, activities, and destinations. Learn more at bostonrvexpo.com. Great prize. Congratulations, Lisa. Have a ball. Let me get Susie in Boston. Susie in Boston, next on Nightside. How are you?
Hi, Dan. Good. How are you?
Doing great. You're on with Ray Howell of Howell Communications. Go ahead.
Hi, Ray. Nice to talk to you. Dan, first of all, I'm a second-time caller. I love listening to your show. I'm going to give you some feedback because you're so articulate, and when you speak to your guests, you really have a conversation with them versus, try to rush them off and get the next caller on. I really love that about listening to your show. You feel like you're sitting next to you and you're losing from having a conversation.
Well, I appreciate that. And having said that, I got to tell you, we only got a couple of minutes left in the hour, so you go right ahead. Sorry.
Let me be quick. I love Charlie Baker. I had the opportunity to have breakfast with him once, and he's fantastic. I'm going to support him doing great things in Massachusetts. A few things I would love to see addressed are Department of DCF reform.
Yes.
Reform, with that department. I'd love to see some improvement on our tax situation, and I'd love to see improvement in the welfare system. And healthcare reform is a no-brainer, but I think we need to handle that at a presidential level. But those are some of the things that I hope Charlie can influence.
Well, Susie, I think those will be in the top of the list. Ray, what do you think?
I think you make some good points. I think Charlie is a combination of, he's a nice combination of someone who's going to tackle the big problems like the budget. He's going to go after the connector. He's going to wrestle with the problems in the Medicaid program. So he's going to go after the big problems, but at the same time, he's a manager and he's a fixer. And I think he's going to be practical, and he's going to be reasonable, and he's going to be bipartisan. And I'll tell you just a quick story, Dan, if we have one more second, that sort of illustrates, I think, what kind of governor he'll be. A couple of weeks ago, he was speaking to a group of, movers and shakers in town. And he was going the next day to meet the president at the White House with a couple of other new governors. And what he said to this group was, listen, what I want to get out of the visit with the president is I want to know who the key people are in his administration that I need to go to talk to about A, B, and C issue. And, it's a rare first-term governor who gets that a meeting with the president is really a courtesy, and that to get business done, to get stuff done for the state, you've got to go to, an
second and third
secretary.
Level. You got
exactly,
it. Absolutely. Susie, thank you so much. We'll talk soon. Thanks for the kind words. Ray Howell, thanks very much. Interesting hour.
Pleasure,
got some
Dan.
good calls. Quick hour, that's for sure. I don't know if you're going to stop by the inaugural, but if you do later on, say hi to all my friends.
I will. And your enemies.
And my enemies as well. They're all welcome to call Nightside. Ray, thanks very much. We will be back right after Dawn Huff.